The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones.
And I have to make a small confession here before we actually get into the podcast. And it's not the one you think it is. It's while you were praying. Okay, so guys, we always start off the Church Planter Podcast with prayer beforehand, right? Because we want to make sure that we're bringing honor to God. And we were having a great laugh before the prayer. Like, it was so funny. I kept thinking, man, I wish this was on the podcast. So then Peyton quickly goes, oh, okay, let's hurry up and pray. And okay, you have to understand something about me, guys. I'm, as Peyton will attest, and if you've been a long time listener of the podcast, you've heard me say this. I don't really like praying in front of other people. Right. So I don't pray in front of Peyton. Peyton's got to take the lead on that because I'm very uncomfortable with it. And I do remember, every once in a while, I'll be praying with Peyton. Like, if something happens major in Peyton's life, I'm like, dude, all right, I'll pray. All right. I'll get past my issues. I'll pray. And I'll be praying and Peyton will go, yes, Lord. Yes. And it throws me off. And I'm like, what's going on? I got voices coming in my head. Right. I kid you not, right? That's what happens to me. It totally throws me off when people start doing stuff like that when I'm praying. So, Peyton's praying, and his second line is, and God, it's so good to see Pete. And I just wanted so badly to go, yes, Lord. Yes, uh-huh.
Amen, brother. I dig it.
Oh, my gosh. So hey, welcome back from the land of, I don't even know where you were. You disappeared on the world for a couple of weeks.
Dude, I did. You know, it was so funny because I was at home, but I was literally getting up at the crack of dawn, going out, and I'm putting a playground. I'm building a ginormous playground for my kids in my yard. I'm basically opening up Park Jones. I've hired a forest ranger. We got a lookout station. I mean, I basically took a 35 by 22 foot stretch in my yard and put artificial grass in.
Artificial grass in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know what artificial grass it is, but it sounds good.
No, grass in. Sorry, I was getting ready to cough. And, I was out there, man. I was working in the rain. A couple guys, Bo Moffitt, Church Planter, Paul Percy.
Dude, I saw Paul Percy on your I'm like, dude, he drove down from Stanton.
Yeah, we had a great time, man. We just talked church planting and,
see, that's when you know, you intentionally wanted to pour into these guys. Cause I didn't even get the nod or the invite at all. It's if we have Pete here, we're not going to actually be talking church planting. So let's leave Pete out of this and Paul.
Just you come help me on my yard. So I was like, I'm not going to ask Pete.
That's a safe bet. I'd be like, yeah. That's why I hire people.
I'll send my boys over. I'll hire some guys for you. I'll send them over.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it was good, man. So that's where I went. And then we went up to the mountains and man, we did not have internet. That's weird.
I don't even know how to respond to that.
It is so weird to go completely cold turkey. And every year we go away, we say, hey, we're going to have a fast from technology, go away, seek the Lord. But this cabin was so remote, it had no technology and we couldn't even cheat, couldn't even go in the bathroom and check your Facebook. It was boom, cold turkey, it cut off. And it was really cool.
If you say so.
Didn't have my train either.
I've missed your train.
I couldn't sleep. There's no train going by whistling at night.
Does your train whistle at night?
Yes, it does.
Oh, dude, that's awful.
It used to wake me up when I first moved here. It'd wake me up every hour. It would do it, and I'd wake up all night. And we were still sleeping on like sleeping bags in the our stuff was on a container coming from Europe. And but now, man, I honestly, like, I don't know if I sleep so well without it.
Okay, I got you.
So, dude, we got so much to talk about. Happy New Year to everybody. I haven't been. I know the podcast has rolled on without me, but
dude, I saw Kirk Overstreet, and he was like, "Okay, I want to have a Rogue One episode. Where's Peyton?" I go, "Dude, he abandoned us." That's all I can say is he abandoned us.
It was just bad timing. I saw it on my vacation.
Okay, I don't understand. You said, by the way, guys, we are going to get in some church planning goodness. For those of you who are new to the show, this is what's called Smack Talk. It's the best part of the episode, and if you don't like it, leave because you're not going to like anything else we have to say.
Or scrub ahead 30 minutes.
And by the way, man, I have just got some juicy stuff to talk about.
Yeah, you do.
You know how
are we
vindictive.
having the Rogue One episode sometime, or are we just going to cover that in Smack Talk?
I think we're just going to cover it in Smack Talk.
Okay.
But you know how vindictive I can be. Like when people give us a 2-star review, I'm just like cyberstalk them.
We'll never get into Rogue One. We better start with Rogue One. If we get you going, get you all wound up and angry. No, well, I'd say let's.
Here's the point. What's today's topic? And then we'll get back to Smack Talk.
Okay, so today's topic is quantity over quality.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that means. No idea at all, but all right, cool. I'm hanging. So do I get to tell my story now?
Yes. Yes.
I don't think it's going to be as funny now. I've kind of built it up too much.
Nah, it'll be good. I haven't even heard this.
No, I couldn't send it to you.
We're texting back and forth, laughing our butt off. I'm like, dude, send it to me now. And you're like, no, I gotta save it.
Well, because here's the thing, guys. All right. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I'm a consultant. Like, that's my day job. Literally the over 207 episodes of the Church Planner podcast. I don't know how many for hardcore church planning. The Church Planner magazine, all of that stuff has not paid a dime in profit. Like, it is basically, it's probably lost money if you were to add everything up. Actually, no. Oh, well, Jump School, because Jump School made us a little bit of cash because I cut you a check.
Yeah, that was cool. I actually saw money at some point.
I know,
that was cool. But for Jump School.
But that was Jump School.
Play, a lot of work went into Jump School.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's got nothing to do with the Church Planner. Well, I mean, it's the same audience. But anyway, bottom line is, if you've been listening for the podcast for a while, you know that's what I do. And I just decided last summer I was going to take on a few church planners and teach them how to do what I do. And help them make more money because I've said this before on the podcast, I think being a consultant could be one of the best things for a church planner as far as income and giving them time with their family and time to work on their church, but not being consumed by a day job. And so I put together what's called the Bivo Church Planner Manifesto. And by the way, if you haven't read that, you're missing out. Check out the show notes. There's a link. You can get it at, I think it's bivochurchplannermanifesto.com. And I got a webinar that I put together on, how to be a consultant and all this type of stuff, right? And I've got a course. So most everybody who has downloaded that stuff has really, really liked it. I mean, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and be like, man, I think this is an answer to prayer. This is what I'm looking for. And that just makes me feel really good. And in fact, we got a new group that literally just started this week. And, I mean, these guys are awesome. They're from all over. We've got East Coast guys. We've got a Canadian and in fact, we got so many people who expressed an interest that I'm thinking about doing another one. But anyway, so this one dude, you know how I get all riled up, man.
There it comes.
This one dude, and here's the funny part. When you and I were texting back and forth, I was like, I want to tell the story on the podcast, but I have to figure out a way to tell the story without calling him a derogatory term every, yeah, thank you, every 5 seconds. Cause the guy was just being a jerk. Like, just being a jerk. And so you actually gave me a term to use, which we'd use as a replacement word. And I thought you were serious. So I've been practicing, man. I've been practicing.
I'm like, no, we can't go there, Pete. But we do have a safe word. If it gets too touchy, Oklahoma. It's our safe word.
Sorry if you live in Oklahoma, man. You're our safe word. So
there's no reason for that, by the way.
To live in Oklahoma?
No, that you're our safe word. It just is.
Oh, okay. Doesn't like one of the Bivo guys, like Lance or
Brad Briscoe.
Is he in Oklahoma or Kansas?
Yeah, he's in Kansas City.
Yeah, same thing.
Oklahoma, isn't it?
Yeah, So anyway,
learn geography on the podcast.
So here's a great marketing tip for you guys that you can use actually in your church. And I was actually thinking, like, how would I use this in my church? Because you got to do it differently than how we use it in business. So here's what happens. Like right now, I run Facebook ads for the Bivo Church Planner Manifesto, and it's specifically for, wait for it, church planners, right? So that's who I'm targeting, church planners and pastors, and offering them the Bivo Church Planner Manifesto for free as a download. So this guy, opts in on Facebook. And so what happens is when someone opts in and says, hey, I want that, I send it to him.
Right.
And then I put them into a sequence that we refer to as the soap opera sequence.
Right.
And the reason why we call it that is, what's that?
Oh, gosh.
Well, no, but it's a marketing term.
No, but I have something to say. So,
what do you have to say? Oh, is this about your soap opera sequence?
Yeah.
Dude, welcome to my world, buddy. That's all I could think when I saw that.
All these people email me back going, are you even a real person? Stop emailing me.
I'm like,
I have nothing to do with it now.
I think my favorite one is this is my third time telling you to stop emailing me. And I'm thinking, have you never used email before? There's an unsubscribe button on the bottom of every email that goes out. It's the law, but it's like, whatever, man. So anyway, so I got this, it's called the soap opera sequence. And what it's meant to do is for people who don't know you, it's meant to create a bond. That's why it's called a soap opera. Because soap opera is like, you know how women used to watch those all the time during the day? And it was like, they just had to watch their soap. In fact, it got so bad in like the 80s and 90s, they had those 976 numbers that you could call into to hear what happened on your soap opera if you missed it, right? Like that's how much people got into them. So that's kind of like the idea behind it. You don't know me. Let me tell you a little bit about myself and kind of welcome you into my world. So like we've got a soap opera sequence for you. Like when people are interested in jump school or something like that, it tells them about your times church planning and some of the highs and the lows of doing that. And so mine talks about the highs and the lows of my life and in business and losing everything and bankruptcy court. And I mean, the whole kit and caboodle, right? So this guy emails me and clearly just, the only way I can put it is he was being a jerk. That's actually not the only way I can put it. That's the clean way I can put it. Yeah. Is he was being a jerk. And so he's like, oh, you must have bought the list of people who wanted the Bivo Church Planner Manifesto, and now you're marketing to them your profit hacking solutions. So like, and then he goes on even further and he goes, I work with a network and I was going to refer this, but there's no way I'm referring you guys now, not after seeing these emails. And I reply back, I go, I'm sorry, man. I don't think I understand. What do you mean I bought a list? I'm the guy who wrote the Bivo Church Planner Manifesto.
Right.
I go, obviously you didn't read it. And he emails back. He goes, no, I didn't read it. It was the holidays. I had set it aside. But after seeing these emails, there's no way I'm going to refer this to my leadership team. I think it would offend too many people. So I'm like, okay.
What did he find offensive?
That's the thing. Who knows, right?
It was emails.
It was from the soap opera sequence. Yeah, it was me telling the story, which we've told on the podcast of filing for bankruptcy, and then like the craziness that happened literally the day I'm filing.
Total Holy Spirit intervention stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I can see how that that would be offensive, that you actually believe God exists and intervenes in your life.
So I'm like, I can't remember exactly what I said back to the guy, but I was like, don't worry. I don't think we'll be recommending your church planning network to all of our readers of Church Planner Magazine, our over 170,000 listeners of the Church Planner podcast and Hardcore Church Planning. I'm like, ooh, wow, dude, you think I'm really like offended by this? And so then he like emails me back, and it was almost like, I don't know, like he didn't realize who I was. And so he was just being a jerk or something.
Yeah.
Like maybe he thought I was just some snake oil salesman out there and just, you know, I'm going to sell people a whole bunch of crap or whatever. Right. And so then he comes back and he's like, hey, look, I apologize. You know, I can tell you're easily offended. I'm like, dude. So, and that's when it hit me. I'm like, okay, he's a jerk so much that he doesn't even realize he's a jerk. Hey, I apologize. Turns out you're really easily offended. I'm like, okay, I'm the last person who's offended. And I go, hey, look, man, you know, tone of voice doesn't come through email. So maybe you meant this a totally different way, but you kind of sounded like a jerk when, you know, and I went through the whole thing and I'm like, in 3 different times you insisted on telling me that you weren't going to recommend me to your network. As if I in any way asked you to do that, as if I cared that you do that, as if I even know who you are, right? I'm like, yeah. Where did this come from? Like, I don't care what you do with your life, bro. Like, you needed to come out and attack someone and to feel good about yourself. And I'm like, and I just said, but I guarantee you that clearly you were offended by the emails because that's what started this whole conversation. I highly recommend that you don't refer anyone to the Church Planner Magazine or the podcast.
It's interesting that he called you easily offended. So here's the thing is I know from, you know, the time that we spent talking and even praying about whether or not, because I remember you going, hey, you know, I don't want to do this for church planners. Like, I'm not doing it to make money off them. In fact, it would cost them like 10 times as much if they actually took this from me in a business context. But you go, I want to help these guys. So I'm going to put a price on it so that they value it. Otherwise, like Jump School, when we offered that free, guys just didn't even log in. Yep. You know, the guys who paid attention, right?
Yeah, that's the way it works.
That was a lesson for me. It was like, because I was like, no, Pete, let's just give it all away for free. And you're like, I get it, but it's not going to work, man. Look, this is how it works. When people pay, they pay attention. But I remember you kind of saying, and even to the point where you're like, look, because I'm not approaching this like I approach business. I literally want to help change these guys' lives because we met with so many of these church planners online, and it's probably more of your time because I know how I'm on one of the groups, and I know how much time you put into it. So all that to say, man, I just it's interesting because I know from the other side whether or not you were like, hey, I don't even know if I want to do this, but I think it can make a big difference. And everything from the podcast, you know.
Yeah, and I've literally not let a single person sign up when they've talked to me. I've said, you've got to sleep on it. You got to pray on it. You got to talk to your spouse about it because I'm not taking your eyes off the prize.
And told them, hey, look, I don't think this is for you because after talking, I don't think you're cut out for this.
I actually had someone who you and I both know. And by the way, guys, this is not someone from Southern California. So don't be thinking, oh, I know who that is. Because you don't. I guarantee you, you know.
Someone from Northern California.
They're not in California, actually. But you and I know this person. And they did approach me. And I just remember thinking, dude, I don't want to say this, but there's no freaking way this is right for you. Like, I know you. You are awesome. But there's no way you're going to do this, man. I mean, it's just not a good fit.
So all that to say, you know, I don't know. What's the moral of this story, Pete?
Dude, the moral of the story is don't cross Petey, because I think one of the lines I even said to him, I go, I'm not easily offended. It's just that when someone's a jerk in ministry, I'm going to point out you're being a jerk and you're in ministry, dude. What's up?
Well, what's kind of cool about that, man, is ministry can be a thing where nobody ever like tells you you're kind of being a jerk. You know what I mean? Everybody's
that's what I got. So like, that was actually what I took away from him. I was like, okay, this is so ingrained in this dude's personality. he doesn't even realize how much of a jerk he's being, probably to people around him and stuff.
Yeah. And really, I mean, we've all had bad days. I mean, shoot, man, there's times I can be a jerk to people. I woke up this morning just thinking we were doing a shoot yesterday and we're losing our daylight. And I just remember kind of saying this, hey, could you not? And I remember just going, I was kind of jerked that I did that. Dude, we are filming incredible stuff right now.
For Church Planter Minute or what?
No, I'm doing it for the Multiply training. Oh my gosh,
cool.
dude, we did a values session and we contrasted Sith versus Jedi. Dude, it was so fun.
Really?
Oh, we had costumes, we've got animations, we got holograms popping up out of our hand, dude. It's amazing.
Dude,
I'm working with a cool team right now.
I went to Islands last night and had a beverage while I was enjoying my dinner. And as always, because I don't like to talk to anyone, I'm pulling out my cell phone and reading a Kindle book, right? Anything to keep from talking to anyone or watching sports on TV, which I can't stand either. And so I actually cracked open a book that we've had this guest, I think, on our show. And they like had there was a line in there where they're like, you got Han, Chewie, Leia, Luke. And I'm like, dude's using Star Wars. What's up?
Who was it?
I'll have to find it. I'm actually afraid to say who it was because what if I was wrong and he wasn't on our show? But I was like, this is so one of our people.
We'll get him on and have him talk about Star Wars, which, speaking of which, is something that we have to do right now. Let's talk about the movie first.
Why did you have mixed feelings?
Yeah, so I didn't think it was as great as everybody else thought, and I look, when I went into it, let me just tell you my experience because I'm not super critical when I watch a movie, right? And it's a Star Wars film, so I'm guaranteed I'm gonna like it. I like the prequels. I know everybody else is like,
I don't even. What do you mean prequels? What's that?
I don't know. There was something that George Lucas did before he retired, but nobody really.
Oh, I think he retired before he did those. I think that was the problem.
Yeah. No kidding, right? Well, see, Revenge of the Sith is one of my favorites. I think that's like number 2 for me, right? Episode 3, I love that thing. But when Phantom Menace came out, because I hadn't had something since I was 10 years old, I was like, I don't care. Bring it on. Bring me a Star Wars film. I don't care. There's lightsabers, there's lasers, there's spaceships. I'm cool. I'm down. There's the Force. It's all I need. And of course there was Darth Maul. So I was like, everyone's like, Jar Jar is stupid. I'm like, hey, that's why my wife went to go see it more than once. I'm totally cool with that. The Ewoks were equally as lame. If you're honest, the Ewoks are just ridiculous. So I'm like, okay, cool. I can handle that. So I didn't have the same impression, but I will say that the prequels, particularly the first 2, I hated the second one, by the way, hated it. Episode 2 hated. But I will say this.
Oh, come on. When they were romping around on the animals.
I hated episode 2. From the moment I saw it, I was like, this is ridiculous. But the reality is the first 2 have not stood the test of time like the original trilogy. They just don't hold up. They didn't have that magic that the original trilogy did. I loved episode 7, loved it, and thought it was worthy. This one I went into with really high expectations. Everyone was texting me because I did not see it opening night. And I think seeing it opening night is kind of a big deal, right? You got the energy, which I saw episode 7 opening night. You got the energy, you got the crowd, you got the expectation. You haven't heard anything yet. And let me just give you my experience in 3 sections. First third of the movie, I'm sitting there going, what are you guys doing? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, it just wasn't clicking for me. It wasn't gelling. It's zooming all over the place. And that not
it
like
does
a Star
do that.
Wars movie does.
It does do that.
You know, like I know a Star Wars movie cuts back and forth, but this was like almost like 5 separate introductions where I'm going, whoa, what in the heck? Where are we? What in the heck's happening? Right. Then the second third, I was bored. I mean, I was bored out of my mind going, this movie sucks. And then the last third, I was like, woohoo, this movie rocks. Right. So I experienced 3 different movies in one setting, really. You know, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
I felt it ended on a high note. I loved the last third. Let me just put it that way.
I have heard a lot of people say that it was a great hour and a half movie and a good 2-hour movie. So they probably could have cut out a half hour. I can see that. I absolutely can see that. I loved it. I loved the whole thing. Obviously, the last half hour of the movie is
so good.
Awesome.
Did you tear up during the robot? Did you tear up at the robot's last scene?
I don't cry, so no.
You're a Terminator.
That's right.
Terminators don't cry.
Dude, I'm not a shepherd, okay? There ain't no crying going on over here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, I loved, I've saw it twice so far. I mean, I'd go see it again. I didn't want Luke to go see it. Here's a spoiler alert. Jump ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it. Didn't want Luke to see it because literally everyone dies in the movie. Like, no one lives. No, not a single soul lives. Yeah. So, you know.
It's true. Mon Mothma, she lived.
She wasn't even really in the movie. But one thing that did kind of bother me, and I just saw a recent post on Facebook, of course, where I get all of my news, and they said 18 scenes in the trailer that didn't make it into the final movie. So I kept looking for this is a rebellion.
Yes.
I rebel.
Yes. That was my favorite line of the trailer. Never made it into the film.
Never made it into the final. Yeah. I kind of... Yeah, there, and as I walked, first of all, as I read the article and it showed every scene, they're like, yeah, this scene of the view of Vader or reflection didn't make it in the final cut. I'm like, dude, seriously, way too much freaking free time on your hand. If like you're picking up on the reflection didn't make it in. But
oh wow,
there was a lot of stuff that, and was not Vader cool in the movie?
Oh my gosh. And the cool part about, so I loved it when they showed him floating in the Bacta tank.
Oh, okay, yeah.
When you first see him, I love that. And then secondly,
what was good about that is it really set the tone that Vader isn't perfect just because they put him in the suit. Like he still has serious health issues.
Yeah. Yeah, it was brilliant. And then the fact that he's jamming through that corridor, just tearing through the rebel soldiers. I love that. But then the guy's like trying to get it through the door. And what they did that I thought was genius was they set you up. Oh, if he could just get it through the door, if he could just get it through the door. He gets it through the door and Vader just slams the door open. And you're like, oh, we're not done then. So that wasn't like the predictable ending of that scene.
Right.
And dude, I love the fact that Peter Cushing was CGI. I know you didn't dig on that, right?
No, I didn't.
Because you told me, you go, there's one thing I didn't like.
I thought the CGI dude was horrible. I really did.
I loved it, man. I was like,
Leia
wait for the day where
was
we
awesome.
We digitally create actors. I told Andrew like 10, 15 years ago when I first started seeing CGI, I'm like, it was Phantom Menace. I told Andrew after Phantom Menace, I'm like, hey, I don't think in future we're going to need actors and actresses. I think we're just going to create them online. Yeah,
I mean, Leia was great.
Oh my gosh, so good.
That was the one where there was like everyone in the audience was silent and the dude behind me just cussed. He's like,
and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like, okay, we lost her recently,
Be careful where you go with this.
No, really sad. I really liked her as a human being. But I think all of us Star Wars fans were like, please tell me they got the footage for the next two movies. Please tell me.
Well, they did for the next one, but not the third one.
Well, and so here's the thing. And this is what I was going to say is it kind of softens it a bit because you're like, we can make her. You know what I mean? I don't mean that to sound cold. I'm just saying.
Maybe we should just remember her from 1977 and just kind of kill her off in the next one.
I'm not allowed to remember Princess Leia too much. I'm married man, Pete.
I'm just saying. She did not look so good in episode 7. They had to do a lot of work.
Harsh mistress, Pete Mitchell.
Well, and I think she's had a rough life. It's not just...
Yeah, she has.
I'm not talking about just time. I think she had a rough life.
You know what I like about her, though, is as rough a life as she had, she kept her sense of humor her entire life. And that means a lot. They're coming out with that.
That really would be us. You and I would just be like cracking jokes at each other's funeral. I guarantee you we'll be cracking jokes.
Absolutely. You better hope I don't do your funeral, pal. Let me just tell you another story about Pete Mitchell.
Yeah,
I will put instructions to the minister doing my do not let Pete Mitchell talk at my funeral.
Oh man, I'll be having fun on that
loved?
podcast episode.
You know what I loved? I loved the dude. I can't remember. You can't remember anybody's name from the new film. They all had these names Feng Shui, Du Shui, or something like that. You're like, I can't say that dude's name. I don't know what his name. All really hard to pronounce and remember names.
But it doesn't matter because they all die.
But Ip Man, right? The guy that plays Ip Man, Bruce Lee's teacher, right? And all the Ip Man films.
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen those films, but
he's the Force sensitive who's like, I believe in the Force. The Force believes in me, or whatever he says. That dude rocked.
I'm with the Force. The Force is with me.
Yeah, and then he flips it around at the end. Did you catch that?
No. What did he say at the end?
I'm with the Force. The Force is with me. When he does his little faith walk at the end, he switches it. The Force is with me. Or the Force is one with me. I'm one with the Force. He flips it around. Like he kind of has his epiphany and he flips the order of how he said it backwards.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Really cool, man.
He still dies.
And then he still dies. They all die. But his death was so good. Dude, all of them. So cool. The AT-ATs walking around the beach.
Oh, woo-hoo. Come on, dude. Anytime you can see like AT-ATs at Pearl Harbor, that's basically what that was.
Oh, and dude, like when shut up, train. Talking about Star Wars. When the doors open on the sides of the AT-ATs and you could fly through them, that was exactly like my toy. When I was a kid, it had the side door open.
I don't remember them flying through it, though. I'll have to go back and watch it yet a third time.
I don't know if they did fly through it, but they could. I just remember seeing the door open in the middle and like you could go straight through it. That was cool. Would have been cool. They should let me work on the film. Okay, so the part I thought was genius. I absolutely loved about the bad guy, and I really liked the bad guy in this because you so wanted to smack him. Every time you saw him, you wanted to smack him. He had that face,
right?
Smackable face. And but I love the fact that they made him such just an arrogant dweeb that he's wearing a cape everywhere. That was like my favorite part. That he's got a cape. He's such an arrogant man that he's walking around in a cape. It was brilliant.
Well, they kind of do a lot of capeness.
I've known people in my life though, where if they could get away with wearing a cape, they would. They just think that highly of themselves.
Why are you looking at me like that?
I'm one with the Force. The Force is one with me.
Oh my gosh. Well, we actually should get into our topic, but
it might be a good idea.
Before we do that,
managed to cram in Star Wars and Pete's rant against the jerk.
I really wanted to use our replacement word. Kind
of took the air out of your sails.
It did, man, because I was going to be hilarious with that. I had whole sentences built out in my head, dropping the replacement word.
You know what? You're just going to have to put your stand-up comedy routine on hold.
Apparently.
It's not meant for 2017. Apparently. You're going to have to work up to that for 2018.
Yeah. So anyway, here's my last 2 cents on that. If you are a leader in a network and you're easily offended, I guarantee you don't want to tell people about my Bible consulting course for church planners. It's probably not going to be a good match.
No, and Pete doesn't want you to because he doesn't want to think about you that much. You have thought about this guy.
No, I thought about the podcast, man. This is going to be so good, man. I'm going to butcher him and then I'm going to send him a link going, hey, listen to the podcast.
Oklahoma. Let me just ask you, did he ever kind of come around though and say, hey, I'm sorry if I was,
just that one time, right? Just the one time where he's like, hey, I apologize. You're really easily offended.
Let me just get one final dig in there at you. Know, right? Hey, what does it say in the scripture? It is the glory of a man to overlook an offense. What's
funny to me is if anyone really thinks that I care about them and their opinion, they really don't know me. Because it's like, dude, seriously? I mean, whatever, bro. Whatever floats your boat. But
and here's the thing, man. I think that all of us have that kind of tendency. Like I said, man, the other day I regret something I said, and everybody has a bad day. You might have just caught him at a grumpy bad day, around the holidays.
Could have been, but I don't think I did. I think I literally, after the whole conversation, I was like, oh, this is just the way this guy is. And he doesn't even realize what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like he just,
all I know, and I've kind of made peace with this, is I can be a jerk at times. Not like, okay, so I don't think I do that, but I definitely feel those things.
I struggle more with pride, I think, than anything else. I can be very, very ego-rific.
I think that's where it comes from, though, because you immediately, like, you respond like that, and you don't think about how is this person going to feel on it, or you judge them. Because I would definitely say that you were judged, and you were falsely judged.
Well, and I would also say too, and I could have falsely judged him. Yeah. Because tone of voice doesn't come through Facebook, email,
though, right?
Yeah,
you see it on Facebook all the time. This is what people are doing constantly, and I wonder if social media has just made it. It's just brought it. It hasn't created it. It's just provided a platform for the ugliness that's in all of our hearts to really kind of surface and come out.
Yeah.
You know? But I think some of us are like, yeah, you know, I probably shouldn't let people, probably shouldn't put it on display on Facebook. I mean, it's definitely in my heart, but I probably shouldn't like let it out, you know, just keep that stuff in, you know, like go back in there.
Right.
Cause I feel all that crap sometimes. I'll judge people, man. That's one of the things I hate is when I'm judging people. And unfortunately I can judge people like the best of them. So, but hey, you know, just happened to be you this time. I judge you every day. So.
I know. Okay. And I'm usually the one who has to apologize for being such an idiot on the podcast.
You know what's funny though, is the older I get, the more of a jerk I realize I am. Like,
me too. I realize you're such a jerk now more than you were 3 years ago.
It's so true though. That's just because you know me better. But I would honestly say, like, the older I get, the more I realize, like, and this is what's kind of cool from the marriage perspective. I find myself apologizing to my wife a lot more than when I was younger. And I think I acted like more of a jerk when we first got married. But I would say now I probably don't act as much like a jerk, but I definitely see a lot more what it would have been really helpful to have had that humility, you know, 20 years of my marriage, to have that humility at the beginning of my marriage and go, hey, you know, I'm really an idiot. Cause I'll say that so fast now. I'll just be like, you know what? Babe, I'm sorry. I'm being a butthole. I'm so sorry, you know, and she'll just laugh. I'm like, yeah, you kind of are, you know, and it's like, yeah, you know, like I'll say I'm being a jerk or whatever, you know, whatever. And she'll just, it just diffuses everything when you can just admit, like, you know what, I'm sorry, you know.
I love it. I love how she just goes, yeah, you kind of are.
Well, because my wife and I, man, we've learned we just got to laugh, you know. That's how we overcome most of our if we get in an argument nowadays, it usually ends with a joke. Someone breaks the ice by cracking a joke and or our daughter stops breathing. That's a classic one in the Jones house.
Does that happen a lot still?
Occasionally she'll not so much stop breathing, but struggle to breathe, you know, not stop completely. But I think in the last 30 days.
Speaking of breathing, what'd you think of that unicorn commercial that Kirk Overstreet sent us?
Yeah, but I sent you one back that rivaled it.
I haven't seen it.
Just wait. Good things are coming.
Nice.
All right. So, hey, guys, our topic today.
And before we get to our topic, though.
Oh, that's true. I'm so rusty on this.
I know, right? I know. Hey, you know, Peyton, let me ask you. Do you know of a cheap and easy way that people can give, maybe online or text-based, to their church?
Nope.
I did a little bit of Googling over the Christmas break, and I actually found a way. Let me tell you about it. It's called MoGive.
Whoa, MoGive. I've never heard of them, Pete. Explain what they are and what they do. I'd love to learn about that. They
are an online and text-based giving platform built specifically for the needs of new and growing churches. And you can find them at mogive.com/church, and that's MOGIV.com. There's no E on the end of that give. They actually wanted to cut down on their expenses and pass the savings on to you. So they shortened their name to MOGIV.com.
Love me some MoGive.
/church.
All right, guys. Well, today I did mention that it's going to be quality over quantity as our topic, but it ties in, you know, I was going back and forth between two topics. And what I want to do is kind of tie them in. I want to tie this in to team church planting, quality over quantity. So basically, here's the question. When we talk about church planting, one of the dangers is our metric system with church planting can get jacked up, because everything that we hear about right now in either established church or church planting has to do with quantity. We're always talking about metrics of numbers. Even though we say, oh, I'm planting churches, it's reaching the lost. What we often hear even then is, how big did your church grow? How fast did it grow? How many did you baptize? Or what is now common is, how many churches did you plant? I always joke around and say it's kind of like the locker room. Like guys boast now about how many churches, kind of like Mickey Taylor, I swatted 5 in one blow. I planted 5 churches in 6 years, or so that can become a metric that again emphasizes quantity. And what we tend to do is we reproduce what gets celebrated. So if the conversation in popular culture, social media, all the posts you're reading really talked about transforming the people in front of you, then you would start hearing a different set of metrics. People would start talking about, how do you make disciples? How do you activate people in their gifts? How do you get people to come alive? And really, if you boil it down, what each pastor really wants isn't just numbers in this church. He wants quality as well as quantity. So we have stories and stories of guys that just, had these big churches and left them, right? They just, Francis Chan was one of them, right? He'd be one where he goes, I gathered a huge room full of people, and suddenly I was like, okay, but this doesn't scratch where I itch. This isn't what I want. And so what I want to talk about today, guys, is how to instill that quality factor in your church plant from the beginning. And the only way that you can do that is really by team church planting. And I know, Pete, what you're thinking.
I don't even know what I'm thinking.
Pete's thinking, what is team church planting? And so we've talked about this before. Team church planting is when you don't just, like, for example, like most of our church planting nowadays starts with, we take one church planter, we pour into that guy, we send him out, and we say, hey, go ahead and gather a team. So for example, I ran this thing called Church Planting Train Station. And I just ran it for like 6 months. But the original intent was to get guys in a geographic area coming together and training them. Some of them were already planting. Some of them were going to plant. Some of them were just exploring planting. Some were in the process. Some had planted a year ago. But all these guys came together, and girls. Girls were allowed to come too. I was pretty radical. But they all came together. And the idea was, rather than sending, like, say there were 15 people, it was like, rather than sending 15 of you out in separate directions, why don't we create teams of you? And you break out in 1 or 2 or 3 years, but you plant with quality to begin with, right? It's not about planting 15 churches right now. It's about planting, kind of like Paul did, with a solid team of people that eventually, when the quality is enough, then they branch out. And that's what Paul did. Because if you remember, when Paul started his church planting journey, he hits the regions of Galatia, and he and Barnabas are just boom, boom, boom. They're hitting, by the way, if you know anything about Galatia, Galatia's a region. Galatia's not a city. So when it says he planted multiple churches in Galatia. And when he writes a letter to the Galatians, that's an entire region. So Paul had really valued quantity over quality back in the beginning. And then he comes back at the end of that journey and goes, you know what? These churches suck. Like, they don't even know the gospel. And he realized, you know what? I've got to start picking people up, taking them with me, depositing teams of people as we plant together, making those churches strong and quality churches, quality church plants. And then we can branch out. And so that team church planting approach was born. And so Paul learned from his mistakes. And I would say, guys, what we're hearing right now is the church realizing that it's made mistakes. I don't know that we're learning from it, because a lot of the conversation today is still the metric of quantity. And as long as we keep celebrating that, that's what we'll reproduce. All right. Guys will come and they'll aim for that because that's the metric of success.
Right.
But when Paul had that paradigm shift into quality, it changed his practice. And what I'm arguing today is that a team approach will ensure quality. And the reason why is because of discipleship. Discipleship is the reason for those 5 roles in Ephesians 4. So when Paul says he gave some to be apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers, he says that they would equip the saints, that the body would grow to maturity, and Christ, through his body, would fill all things. And so what Paul sees is the discipleship through those 5 roles of the average everyday believer to be raised up and released in ministry is crucial to the expansion of Christ's presence in the world. And so that's kind of my intro into that topic. Any thoughts, questions come to mind?
No, because to me it almost sounded like the summary.
Yeah. Well, it's the setup, because naturally after that you got to say, well, what does that look like? Like, how do I plant in teams, or what does that look like? What are the roles? I mean, so there's a way to break it down further, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting because, bringing the conversation back to me, because that's kind of how I roll.
That's what I always hope. This whole podcast is about you.
The pride in me, just comes through. Doesn't he know who he's talking to? Come on, man. I'm the co-host. Anyway, it actually, and this does actually bring it back to me, but I've been talking to a lot of church planners on the phone, because they've been wanting to go into my consulting training. And I always started off by wanting to know about their church plant and what they're doing. And it is so interesting hearing all the different backgrounds and where everyone is coming from. Like I was talking to a guy, I don't know, yesterday or the day before, who he's got a church plant of like 40 people. And this is after, I think he said this was after like 5 years, and he's only been the head pastor for a year and a half.
Oh.
And that would like bother a lot of people, right? They'd be like, it's only got 40 people. But he's like, dude, we're reaching people that no one else is reaching. And he's like, we're in the Bible Belt. He goes, everyone says to us, why do you want another church? There's a church on every street corner. He's like, because they're not reaching the people that aren't saved. They're just reaching other saved people and the transfer growth. And I think there's always going to be that draw that pastors and church planners are going to have, is we see on TV the megachurch. Where does exponential meet? It meets at megachurches, right?
Yeah.
It meets at Saddleback. It meets at a megachurch on the East Coast. And so there's almost like this, hey, church planner, one day this could be yours kind of a thing. But that is, and I'm not saying that's what anyone is actually saying at Exponential or anything like that.
No, it's just a place to host a big number of people.
That's all it is. But, and I think the church planner needs to be careful that they don't let that become their God, of this is what I'm after, or I know I'm successful as a church planner when I got 200 people, I got 300 people. I talked to a guy the other day.
Here's the thing.
Let me just tell this real quick. Sorry. I talked to a guy the other day. He's got 300 and I think he said 60 people typically come to his church plant. Most church planners that I know would consider that a success. They'd be like, wow, dude, 360 people, that's a big church.
Yep.
Interesting thing is, most of those people are like our Long Beach church. He goes, They don't have money to give. He goes, I just got a $24,000 a year pay cut from the church because there's no money. Like, we're reaching people, but the people who we're reaching, there's no money. So, I mean, it's a different mindset.
It's so funny because I just finished up the training for fundraising for Multiply. We film these videos, and we hit on all this. We hit on the fact that before you ask other people to fund the mission you're on, and sacrifice, you have to ask the question, am I willing to sacrifice for this? So when you go after certain people, like in the Bible Belt, when I go through the Bible Belt, man, I'm in Waffle Houses, and I stop at a filling station. I see the truck stops that are there, and I think to myself, who's reaching these people, right? Like who's at these truck stops, man? Like there is a lot of drug use, a lot of prostitution, a lot of vice, a lot of massage parlors. Who's going after them? And so people have this idea. It's really funny because my family in the South is this is ironic because they're all Christians, but they're very suspicious of church. They've come to see how high on the hog pastors can live. Right. I'm just putting a blog up today about Chaucer 700 years ago, talking about the fat friar versus the parson. And he talks about the priest, the bishop, and Canterbury Tales. 700 years ago, he was pointing out these things. Why are the guys that are supposed to be like reaching the lost not making the sacrifices to do so? And so church planners, this is why I love working with church planners. They will make the sacrifice to reach lost people. And whereas, like you said, like I got to be careful here because I'm not saying if you got a big church, you're not making sacrifices to reach lost people. Don't want to overstate. But this is what I think Pete and I find so exhilarating about working with most of you guys out there listening is we know what you've been through. Pete, because he's been at Refuge Long Beach, he's seen exactly what these guys are talking about. He's seen it. Ironically, sometimes these church plants, I remember you going, I don't know how this money came in. I was talking to a church planter last week who was in a pretty bad neighborhood. And he was like, man, this much comes in a month. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if people outside are funding this or what, but the reality is that even in those situations, like what we're talking about, even if we're not talking money, if we're talking quality, imagine the amount of discipleship. Like when I was talking to this guy, he was saying how, teen prostitutes are getting saved at his church, underage prostitutes. And he said, here's the thing. Imagine the amount of discipleship that needs to happen in these broken places, these broken neighborhoods. Another reason for you where for quality, these are going to be people that are going to be so radically transformed and transformational for anyone that they're around that you need a team around you. You need a team of men and women, not just men, because I know a lot of times we think, a team of guys. And one of the things in Refuge Long Beach was that if you were an elder, we took it seriously where Paul talked and he's like, hey, the wives also, the deacons, the wives also. These are the qualifications for you. You're on our team. Like we need you, right? Because I'm definitely not going to go minister to an underage prostitute who just got saved, but my wife can. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And
so team planning is really important because like I said, discipleship, and here's what discipleship is, guys. For example, this is a problem I have. When I plant a church, I felt so much like George Bailey. I just watched It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas. I felt so much like George Bailey at Bedford Falls trying to get out with Refuge Long Beach. Because remember I tell you, I'm like, hey, I'm only here for a year, first year. Second year, I'm like, Charlie's going to take it over. Charlie goes to Yorba or to, where did Charlie go? What's the name of that city?
Whittier.
Charlie goes to Whittier. Then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, we're going to find a person. It took forever for us to find someone, a teacher, because I kept training up apostolics, Reuben, Jimbo was going to be one, but all these guys wanted to plan out. And it was like, well, I reproduce myself. That's what discipleship is. You're reproducing who you are. That's why Paul raised up disciples who became apostles. Timothy, Titus, Silas, all these guys, Barnabas, are all called apostles. And so when you're a church planner, you tend to raise up people who are like you, right? Those are the people that identify with you and you identify with them. But that's why you need a team, because not everybody's called to be apostolic. You're going to need a shepherd. You're going to need a teacher. I was reading a book recently, Gathered and Scattered by Hugh Halter and Matt Smay.
Haven't you read that before? Were you rereading it?
Yeah, I was rereading it. Yeah. Okay. And Hugh, it's, by the way, that is a fantastic book. If you guys have never read that book, I was stunned this time how many things I missed the first time. I'm like, I don't remember you writing that, Hugh. That's good. That probably says more about where I'm at. But Hugh basically said, we had the shepherding skills of, I don't remember what he said, like a WWE wrestler or something stupid like that. But he was like, we needed touchy-feely people around us to minister to people's hurts and needs because we were apostolic. And so when it comes to those needs in your people, you need the apostolic, the prophetic, the evangelist, the shepherd, and the teacher to pull on each individual believer. So like Pete's walking around, average Christian, and he's got parts in him that only an apostle could pull out of him to bring him to spiritual maturity. He's also got parts of him that only an evangelist can develop. So like Pete might be, like I see this a lot within the Reformed camp, right? Everybody gravitates towards what seems to be the part they relate to the most. So more of the people that respond to prophetic leaders end up going off to the Pentecostal charismatic movement. People that respond well to teachers, they tend to go to the Reformed movement, which is a teacher-led movement. Rather, we've fragmented in the body of Christ, right? The apostolic guys tend to be church planners, a kind of radical, edgy. But what happens is that if you only go to a church, it's all about teaching and the word, that's all that gets developed in you. And so you can't actually like do anything, right? Like you don't know how to use the gifts because no one's pulled that out of you. No one's helped tease that out of you spiritually. You haven't sat in a meeting with a guy who teaches theology like John Piper, but then the guy tag teaming with him is a prophetic type leader. And he says, well, my role in this body is to stir up your gifts, right? To help you stir up your gifts. And so that you actually have the faith to step out and use them. That's what prophetic people do. They encourage people to use their gifts. Apostles are really good at recognizing them because they got to put people in place they can leave, like George Bailey, and blow themselves out of Bedford Falls. But the reality is, for me, I could never leave Bedford Falls in Long Beach because, at a certain point, I wasn't, I was just reproducing me. And what happened was, we didn't have, really at the beginning, we had an apostolic team, but they were all apostles.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. At the very beginning, almost everyone on our team. Then we had Bonomo, but he was just like in pupa form. Now Bonomo's come into his own.
Right.
Not only is that dude tearing up the pulpit, but he's just, he's like a hybrid. He's like a shepherd evangelist. I don't really know what category to put that guy in, but he's tearing it up right now. And he's probably, realistically looking at Mike, he's probably ended up becoming apostolic. But Langham's definitely a teacher. He's there and he's a teacher. And so he's, and kind of what's cool is Langham being there has really developed the other guys into being able to teach. But the place I was going with that was, I'm gonna, let's say you just go to a teaching ministry, you're gonna really understand the scripture really, really well, and you're not gonna do anything with it, right? Because you don't have an apostolic guy going, hey man, let's take all this knowledge and let's get it out there, out into the community. Or you don't have an evangelist so the apostolic guy really specializes in turning the church outside, turns it inside out. He mobilizes church people to reach lost people in mass. So he creates this missionary culture amongst his people. That's why the missionary movement or the missional movement tends to be really apostolic. Most of the guys writing the books on that, apostolic, Alan Hirsch, Hugh Halter, myself, different, Caesar Kalinowski. These guys are all missional, but they're all apostolic. There's a reason for that. So they're writing books that are mobilizing the church to get out there. But an evangelist is different. What the evangelist does is he doesn't really mobilize a church to get out, other than what he really does, he goes out and he just preaches the gospel to the lost. But what he'll do is he'll tap on Pete, who's like, hey man, I'm just enjoying my Bible study, but don't talk to me, right? But he'll be like, no, Pete, no, come with me. And Pete, because in Pete, there's this, there's this Holy Spirit in him that looks like Jesus. And as all 5 of those things combined, it's going to pull on Pete. Even though Pete goes, I don't really want to go out and talk to people about Jesus.
Or talk to people, period. We can just put a period right there.
I don't really want to do this, but Pete will feel drawn to it under the right leadership. The guy who pulls that out of Pete, who takes what that part of Jesus that's already in him, that the Holy Spirit's trying to conform Pete to the image of Jesus with a Pete Mitchell skin on. And that leader will start honing that and pulling that and teasing that out of Pete so that Pete starts developing evangelistically. And for Pete, when I met Pete, the way that came out was apologetics. Those guys are all evangelists, right? Apologetics.com. And Pete was on that board because somewhere along the line, that was calling to Pete. That was pulling on Pete. And that was an area that the Holy Spirit was developing in him. And I've seen countless times where Pete's like, hey, I'm going to go talk to my friend, about the gospel. And boom, they head out to islands.
Well, I don't think I've ever said it like that. It's just, it has transmutated into that.
Yes, we've transmutated that lead into gold. But I mean, you share Jesus with them. And, it's just kind of it's a beautiful thing. And that's what the Lord wants to do in every believer. And I think our metric system needs to shift away, and it will do as we more head towards team leadership. Our metric system and the conversation we need to have needs to be more about what people's giftings are. Now, I got a book coming out, Reaching the Unreached. Cha-ching! Cha-ching! It comes out May 16th. You can pre-order it now on Amazon.com. But, the reality is that in that book, I talk about the activating of gifts, because to me, that's the metric. I can't leave a community, a church that I planted, until people's gifts are activated. Right. Their discipleship needs to happen, that all of these 5 roles, these 5 gifts are pulling and teasing out of each believer these 5 areas. And what will happen is people will specialize. I'll find guys like Steve Ortiz, I write about in the book, where he's a chain link fence salesman. I always mention he's my favorite example, because nobody ever really saw anything in Steve other than a guy who could maybe set up chairs. The dude's an evangelistic animal now, but he needed the right leadership. I started taking him to all these church planning meetings, and it was just because I discipled him. I just saw that the people I was going to leave behind, none of them were leadership material, quote unquote. But I was like, well, if I spend time with them and disciple them, something will emerge. And I could never have predicted. It's kind of like those little Kinder eggs. My kids get these little like prizes, and they got them in all these like little toy things right now, where it's like some little chocolate wrap thing, and you unwrap the tin foil, and there's chocolate, you eat the chocolate, and then there's a toy in there, like a little toy surprise, right? It's like a box of Cracker Jacks. You don't know, as you disciple people, what in the heck's going to develop out of them. But it's changed my view of leadership. I used to disciple people that I thought were leaders. And Refuge Long Beach taught me that you just disciple the people in front of you, and leadership will emerge. I think that's what Jesus did with the 12, right? He just discipled those 12 guys that nobody could have ever predicted would be powerful leaders. And they became gospel animals. So somehow we need to change the quality, the qualitative analysis or the quality metric. Guys need to be talking about, How many of your people in your church plant know what their gifts are? How many of the people in your church plant are activated in those gifts? How many of the people in your church plant have been released in those gifts? Right? So it's the are they aware of them? Have they been awakened? Have they been are they aware? Are they awakened? And are they released? I should come up with another A.
And then I think you should put it in a book.
I should. Well, that's why. The 3 P's are the P's I have to take in between the times I'm speaking at a conference.
Or during the podcast.
But that was just one.
It was. No one knows what we're talking about. We've cut that out.
Don't. You did cut that? I wondered a few earlier. I go, hey, Pete, you got to pause this. I got to pee, man.
I was like, not again.
Normally I just do the potty dance, but today
it was too early in. You would have been dancing a long time.
The spirit was willing, but the bladder was weak.
That's the way it goes.
That's all I have to say. But you know what, Pete? It is January. This is the time where end of year tax receipts need to be sent out. So if you're a church planner, you're like, holy crap, what's that? You're in trouble, because all those people donating to your church plant, they really need tax receipts, because they're going to report to the IRS how much they gave in charitable giving this year. And they kind of need a receipt from you. And if you don't do that, guess what? You may not get donations from those same people next year, because people kind of depend on that.
I definitely do. I depend on y'all giving me a tax receipt.
Oh, is that personal?
I'm talking to all of the listeners who who might have benefited.
Hey, you know what? I have Simplified Church, and Simplified Church keeps track of my giving all year long.
You're talking about for Refuge Long Beach, right?
Yes, I am. For Refuge Long Beach. They keep track of my charitable giving all year long, even though I'm not there anymore. But Pete, I was able to safely leave them in the hands of SimplifyChurch.com, knowing that they would look after the needs of all of my donations, all of my tax receipts, anything financial at all. Payroll, cutting checks.
Ironically, I have a conversation with Josh over there at Simplify Church today, because I want him to do that for my business.
Nice.
Because I don't want to do it. I hate doing all that stuff. I hate the paperwork.
I dig that you're going to like a church planning nonprofit bookkeeping service for your business.
Where else am I going to go, dude? I know the dude. He's a client of mine. It's only fair that I be a client of his.
Absolutely. And a sponsor of the podcast, I might add.
Woo-hoo.
Seriously, guys, if you don't have someone doing that, I'll tell you what, now is the time of year that you burn out a treasurer faster than anything else, because most treasurers that you get that volunteer don't know how to do this, and it's really intimidating, and it's IRS stuff. It's big boy stuff. So anyways, head on over to simplifychurch.com. They'll talk to you and even give you an estimate. Check it out. Now's the time of year. Actually, before this was the time of year, but they're good peeps. They'll help you out.
They are good peeps. So anyway, I guess we're done. Why don't you close this out?
All right, here's the jingle. Hey, church planner, thanks for joining us today for the first podcast with Pete and Peyton of 2017. Trust us, it will only go downhill from here. But we want to thank you for joining us.
And absolutely do not refer us to any of your friends and family, because I guarantee you we will offend.
That's not true. But
I guarantee you Pete will offend.
Oh, well, that's probably true. We probably will. But
I didn't even bring up the samurai on this episode, and I wanted to bring that one up.
Don't go into that. Back away, California. Keep away from here.
California has the upper hand. Wait.
John Doe has the upper hand.
There it is. John Doe has the upper hand.
Yes, there's a samurai in the box. Please back away. So here's the deal. Guys, thanks for joining us. We want to remind you that if you want to reach the ones nobody's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing. And hey, and while you're at it, you might as well go see the new Star Wars film, although it's not as good as I don't think as Pete thought, but it's just, there it is.
So back off. Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.